Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Stefan. Mark's done a great job of outlining some of the challenges that we have and quite frankly, some of the problems. I'm sure these are nothing new to you. You're in this industry, so you've seen them grow, and you're a person in the world, so you've certainly experienced some of the challenges yourself. I thought I would talk a little bit about what we're building in order to solve these things. And I don't have to tell you that it sort of feels like the 90s again, and that we're right at the precipice of a brand new paradigm shift like we were with the web back in the late 90s, and that is the growth of conversational interfaces. And this is going to be extraordinary growth. Anyone in the industry probably knows this already, so I don't need to go into this, so I won't. But we're recognizing that the entire world's going to change again around these services the same way that back in the late 90s, many people sort of poo-pooed the web as this weird, poor graphic design interface for services, et cetera, and yet it's changed everything. Every single company, every single NGO, every single government agency has reoriented its services around these technologies. And I don't have to tell you that we've been thinking about conversational interfaces and expecting them for a very, very long time. So I'm not going to try to convince you of that. I assume, again, that you're familiar with many of these stories and many of these essentially prototypes for the future. Some of these have been really surprising, kind of wonderful. Some of them have been extraordinarily successful. Some of them have been laughingly problematic or laughing sort of failures. Some of them have been kind of troubling. And many of the ways that these technologies are evolving can be downright scary at times. That's one of the things that we as a community need to acknowledge as we build for new systems in the future. It's not a good idea to rebuild in this paradigm around conversational interfaces, essentially what we built with the web, which is to say, build in the same biases. And in the case of these technologies, right now there's only about 10 companies worldwide, just a handful, that can build something as sophisticated as a Siri or an Alexa or a Google, an Ask Google or OK Google, et cetera. And that's not a good idea. If we rewind back to the late 90s in the web, we had open source, independent programming languages and protocols and file formats that allowed anyone to build a website. Those things got more complicated over time, but you didn't have to go to just a handful of companies worldwide to get your website. Imagine yourself back in 1998, and a company hires you to build a website, but you have to go to Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, and a handful of other companies to make that website happen. That's essentially where we are with voice bots. It's not so true right now in chatbots, but it will become truer as we rely more and more on machine learning and other quote-unquote AI technologies. That's not good for our community. It's not good for users. It's not good for the growth of these technologies or the world. So we're trying to create an alternative to that. I don't have to tell you how dangerous some of this could be as these technologies develop, certainly in other parts of the world than the United States. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to build a system that is more fair and more open and more independent. And that's what we're building with the Seed platform. So we're building that open, independent platform that's not owned by any of the big companies. In fact, it's owned by a nonprofit based offshore, not in the United States, so that we don't come into purview of some of the current political climate in terms of legislation and regulation. But we're building this for you, for us, for people who want to build conversational interfaces, not just as developers, but people who want to deploy them as companies and as brand ambassadors and as service providers for the very needed services and the interactions that they want to build for their customers and for their customer relationships. Because those companies should be able to own their customer relationships and the value that goes between them and not have it funnel through Baidu, a Tencent, a Google, an Amazon, et cetera. When that happens, they no longer own those relationships. They become essentially OEMs or service providers for Amazon and for Microsoft and for these other companies. We're putting the whole thing on the blockchain. How many people are familiar with blockchain? Let's start with how many have heard the term? Okay, how many feel like they have a good understanding of what's going on the blockchain, what it is? Okay, I didn't raise my hand on that. This is a brand new technology. It's going to change the world the same way that AI and ML and CUIs are going to change the world. And it's exactly the appropriate technology showing up at the right time now for these purposes. Because it essentially creates radical transparency. So we don't have a lot of transparency into Google and Baidu and Tencent and Amazon, et cetera. And we've seen some problems already arise because of that. Blockchain is all about radical transparency. And so we're using this technology at the core of what we're building so that transparency is built in to the platform to begin with. And we're building an ecosystem that allows for different kinds of stakeholders to get what they need out of these kinds of relationships. So essentially on a technical level, we're building a big independent middleware platform, and we're putting bot stores on the blockchain so that developers like you and your clients and then your users can all have control over your data, get authenticated bots so that you can trust the bot you're talking to. And by the way, the bots that you use can trust other bots as they do other kinds of transactions. And then you can control the data for your company as well as for you as an independent user. But most of all, because we want to build essentially what never got built for the music industry. Right now, if you put your music if you publish your music through a studio or through a platform, you don't get paid every time it gets played. And neither does the person who did the lyrics or the album art or the backbeat or some other piece of that music. Wouldn't it be wonderful, and we've talked about this for over a decade, if everyone that contributed to a song got paid every time that song got played? Well, that's a pain in the ass, essentially, to make happen because it's a lot of computations and a lot of tracking of transactions. But it's not impossible. In fact, it becomes very easy when you do this on the blockchain. So our bot stores on the blockchain allow developers to put in whole bots and license them, bot components. Maybe they're a writer or an illustrator or a coder that can't make a whole bot themselves, but they can put components of these things that get licensed for other users. And it allows bot services, let's say ML services and pattern recognition or language translation, et cetera, to all plug into the box store so that we can all use them to create and deploy bots and serve people better. There's a whole bunch of infrastructure. I'm not going to go into this. This is it's still before 10 a.m. in the morning, so I don't want to get too technical. But I can, we can talk later on today. I'll be here all day if you have questions about this. But we're in the process of building this platform. We're also licensing a ton of IP, tools, templates, and patents so that anyone participating in the platform gets free use of these things. That includes a voice-to-blockchain patent. So if you want to if you want your bots to trigger financial transactions over the network, that might come in handy. But we're making all those available on the platform as well so that we can enable this transition, this paradigm shift to happen as well as possible. And so people are able to earn seed token. You as developers or we as developers can earn seed token in an economy. Every time your code or your contribution is used, you get compensated for it. Even users, Mark talked about we give away our data for free constantly these days. We have built into the platform that users can control who gets to see what kind of data. And that means that these data providers like an Amazon can pay us for the data if we so choose. All of that's built in at the core. You're the first to see this. This is our new developers garden. So we've launched this. You can go to developers.seedtoken.io. It's not linked anywhere else yet. So essentially we're debuting it here. But these are some of the developer resources that we've made available. We're working on protocols for displaying 3D avatars. We're working on protocols to make definable file formats. And then, of course, we're pulling all this technology together to make the bot stores and enable them with the blockchain, et cetera. So here's probably the first place that you can go to learn more about getting involved because we are looking for people to come help us. We're a registered nonprofit, or as close as you can get to a nonprofit in Singapore, and we're offshore specifically because we want to be as independent as possible from certain kinds of regulations and certain kinds of access to data stores. And being in the U.S. makes that a little less independent. Being some other places makes it a little bit better, especially as a blockchain. company, but we're a nonprofit because we specifically don't want to be buyable. We're acquisition resistant because we're building for the future. The moment someone comes and offers, if we were a for-profit, the moment that someone comes and offers the board of directors, $1 billion for this thing to buy it, that's the moment it becomes no longer independent. And that would be a problem for this community. So we're trying to build a nonprofit, independent, open platform, and this is the best way to do it. So we're looking for help. We're already talking with partners that are deployers or customers of bots. We're working with tons of developers and developer communities. We're working with other blockchain projects and other kinds of service providers. And we're looking for help from you in helping to build these tools, populating the bot stores with services and components and bots, helping to define some of the protocols that are missing in this community in order to spur a much healthier, more dynamic, and faster growing paradigm shift, essentially. So that's it. I don't know if we have time for Q&A, but I'm happy to entertain some. And Mark, you can come back up. We have a little bit of time. Great. Yes?
Where's your funding?
Our funding is from a couple sources. Mostly, I'll be very frank, our funding is mostly from investors who are investing in the token because they expect this token to be valuable in the future. And that it's a very interesting new kind of funding model that a nonprofit can do that a for-profit couldn't, and that a nonprofit couldn't do before. But as a nonprofit, we can take grant money, we can take nonprofit donations, so we can remain independent, but yet still get the funding we need to do development. Any other questions? Yeah?
When you say about blockchain, so it's integrated with your bot? The user just need to configure it and they can ready to use, or it's something else which you are projecting blockchain with your bot? I know the question, I don't know clear or not.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, is the bot currently integrated with blockchain, and what's the point? Yes, it is. If you go to Seed Token, there is a demo that's there, and you're able to use Block Explorer to see in the interface in real time that when you talk with the bot, those API service calls are being registered on the Ethereum public blockchain. So yes, and it's working, and you go see it. We have the multimodal bots we'll be rolling out and showing also as we go. But why would we put a bot on the blockchain? Well, it's kind of the same thing as why would you publicly certify an accountant? Because you need to be able to trust it. Bots are currently not only negotiating our interactions with one another as people, but they're definitely negotiating our interactions with service providers. So just as an accountant needs to be publicly certified, a bot needs to be publicly visible. And blockchain is a great technology that we're using for that.
The other thing I would add is, bots look a little bit like a niche technology right now because they haven't grown to where we all expect them to grow. But very quickly, very soon, we're going to have bots become agents for us and essentially perform transactions, and many of those transactions are ultimately going to be financial. So one of the ways of keeping those bots not just trustable, but tracking those transactions is to use the blockchain to do so because it's immutable and it's so transparent. Okay, other questions?
I have a question. How many people have a Facebook account? One hand, please. Hold it up, hold it up, hold it up. Come on. How many of you also has a Google account? Okay, and LinkedIn? Okay, all right, that's enough. So one of those accounts, roughly speaking on an average, is something around $75 a month. That's the value of your data you're putting into the system. And I'm frankly progressively more shrill about this issue every year the more that I think about it. We're looking not only at massive socioeconomic displacement on a global scale, but we're looking at something that we can no longer trust. Now, how many of you have an Alexa, please? When you talk with your Alexa, recognize that why you like something, the emotion in your voice is being recorded by that system. And again, as I started off by saying, when somebody gives you something for free, please question their motivations. Any more questions?
Questions, preguntas. Come on. Who wants to prove that they're listening? You guys did a good job, apparently.
Thank you.
I guess we answered that.
Nothing about the bot chain or anything? All right. Wait, sorry, he was quicker. Back here.
Yeah.
Here you go, sir.
You said when someone gives us something for free, question their motivations. What are your motivations?
Wait, caveat, except for the free gifts here when you use the hashtag. That's it. Chatbot conference, that free stuff is cool. Okay.
Our motivations at its core are to build something that is collaboratively better and that we can all profit from. As Stefan said, chatbots have been helping businesses make money. And our core motivation is to make sure that not only businesses are making money and are scalable with bots, but that individuals are making money and that their individual knowledge is scalable. So the problem is that while we can scale technology of corporations, we are not currently able to scale the knowledge of individuals. We're still selling our heartbeats. I'm interested in changing that. I'm an author of several books, and I like getting licensing revenues. I do the work once and it comes back. We need to be able to do that with our words and our photographs as we're doing on Facebook, but also now with the social interactions we're having with the bots. So I'm interested in making money, and I'm interested in seeing everybody else do it as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I have no problem with free services. I just want some choice. I want to choose who I share data with and what kind of data that is. There was a study that came out last year from a research group that basically claims that with about 45 seconds of recorded audio, they can diagnose many forms of mental illness. Well, I want to know if that processing has been processed on a customer service call that I did on a phone call. And I want to know who has access to that. And will the government see it? Will my job see it? Right now, we don't have any choice over any of this, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So I'm perfectly happy with giving my data up for free when I feel like I'm getting value for it or when I know what's being done with it. It's the fact that I don't have a choice right now and don't even know the transparency of what's happening to it that I think is a huge problem.
Question from Yannicka, right here.
Hi there. I'm interested in getting your opinion on sort of almost predicting the future, how you think things are going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. So you mentioned sort of jobs are going to be displaced, how you think things are going to unfold with that and what's going to happen.
Well, we've built a ML-powered future prediction bot, so you can query that for about $100 a question, and we'd be happy to answer that for you.
Yeah. At its core, we see conversational interfaces as being an inevitable future. Nathan and I were both here in the early 90s, and I don't know, there were probably of those first 10 .coms, we were probably responsible for helping build 2 or 3 of them. So we've watched the evolution occur. We said, oh yeah, the web's a big deal. We're going to be seeing more people using this graphical user interface. And people would fly from Los Angeles here to San Francisco to look at these things. It's like a web page, right? It's on another computer. Holy shit. Well, as we watch, and as we get a little bit gray in the hair and old in the back, we see that interfaces that are simpler, more intuitive, and faster usually integrate and sit on top of the previous media types that are there. So we see the inevitable future of conversational interfaces in front of us. 10 years, I don't know how many systems will be talking with us. I don't know how many augmented reality swarms of bots will be flying around our heads while we walk through a mall. And I don't know how we will be tracked and what will be done with that data. And that future that we see, which has a dystopic ring to it, is something that we need to address. And we need to consciously wake up and do it now. Amazon is eating this market. And what they're doing is they're disintermediating companies from the end user relationship. So we have 2 futures. One, Amazon, Baidu, Tencent, Google own everything, including us, or we find open source alternatives like Linux and Wikipedia, and we monetize those and build together. How's that?
All right, let's give Nathan and Mark a huge round of applause, please. Good job, excellent.